There is a lot of stuff to talk about in the men's basketball realm, from coaching staff news to key returning players. Let's get right on in to the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. I also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time, as always, to personally thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. A good amount of stuff to talk about in the men's basketball realm for the Louisville Cardinals. We will begin by talking about Nolan Smith is expected to join Kenny Payne's staff. We'll also talk about two key returning players that both announced that they will be returning to the Cardinal program next season, and that is Ellis and Mike James. We will also discuss what next season could hold for both of those players. We'll start out by talking about seemingly the first official bit of coaching news, and I guess it's really not official yet because it hasn't been announced by the university, but it seems all but certain that Duke assistant or former Duke assistant Nolan Smith is joining Kenny Payne's staff at Louisville as the associate head coach. For those who really aren't aware, Nolan Smith is from the city of Louisville. His father played for the Cardinals, was a national champion on the 1980 team. Unfortunately, passed away back in 1996. But Nolan decided to go to Duke. I feel like I shouldn't really have to, go on record and say all this, because likely if you didn't know who Nolan Smith was before the announcement was made by various media members, Jeremy Wallman being one of them. Shout out to, the Wallman Wednesday host, Jeremy Wallman, our special guest that joins the show every week. Unfortunately, not this week, but he is down in Orlando, going to catch some Nike EYBL action later this week. He's been pretty adamant that Nolan Smith was going to be on the staff. And, he came out with the news on, I think it was Monday, it was Monday afternoon. And then right after that, it seemed like various amounts of national media members came out with the same thing. So definitely glad that he is on staff. And this was one that was pretty much expected over the past couple weeks. So I think that the first thing that I did was just kind of gauge how big of a hire this was. Now, obviously, Nolan Smith, listed as one of the brightest, young coaches coming up through the ranks, one of the best recruiters in the country, so on and so forth. But I really wanted to see on what scale of magnitude was this hire? How big of a home run was this hire? Was it a home run that, inside the park? Was it one that just grazed the foul pole, or was it one that was completely blasted out of the park? Now, I got to be honest, that might not have been the greatest analogy, but you get what I'm saying. How big of a hire was this? I kind of went to see on Twitter some reactions from Duke fans, Duke media and stuff like that. I don't really have access to message boards, but a Discord chat that I'm in had posted some of the screenshots of what some of the various users had said. And it seemed like, there was some bitterness, obviously, with Nolan Smith having played at Duke and, ultimately leaving for an ACC school. It kind of stung. And if Louisville fans were in the same position, I would expect them to react the same way. But it seemed like there was a lot of gratitude, a lot of acknowledgement, same thing, acknowledgement of the fact that Nolan Smith has a bright future. It seems like a matter of time until he becomes a head coach at a pretty solid program. But I think that the telltale signs were the various media members that claimed of how big of a loss this is for Duke. And I don't know who posted it. I think it was a various national recruiting analyst somewhere in the country on Twitter had tweeted that this was a grand slam hire for Kenny Payne to start filling out his coaching staff. Now, obviously, Milt Wagner has been a coach that has been rumored that is going to join the staff. Kind of waiting for some more official word to talk about that, and we will when that word becomes official. But overall, I think that this is a huge hire. And one thing caught me off guard. Jay Williams, the national basketball analyst, former Duke Blue Devil, played under Coach K, one of the more renowned college basketball analysts, him and Jay Billis. Williams went on record and said that, obviously this is paraphrasing, that he would not be, I guess, surprised if Coach K decided to come back due to the threat that Nolan Smith could have on the 2022 or 23 recruiting classes, or one of, or if not both, I'm not sure which one he was alluding to. But, he basically said, hey, Coach K, it wouldn't surprise me if he decided to come back in some capacity to make sure that, it was smooth sailing to get these guys signed and make sure that they join the program at the end of the day. So, and obviously this might be said in a hyperbolic way. Jay Williams could be 100% telling the truth, and he truly believes that. Now, whether there is any merit to that opinion, well, I guess that's yet to be seen. I would expect that not to be the case and that Coach K remains retired. But ultimately, just the fact that Jay Williams went out there nationally and said that's huge. I mean, that just shows you how big of a hire this was for Kenny Payne. Whether or not this even comes to a possible, it even becomes a possible opportunity for Coach K to come back in some capacity. I think just the fact that Jay Williams brought this scenario up, he brought this up in the sense of, whether it's true or not, this is a huge hire for Louisville, and, maybe more so a bigger loss for Duke because of his role, not only in the recruiting, on the recruiting trail, but also on the, the Duke sidelines, along with John Shire, who is not only having to, add an assistant coach, but now has to replace, one of his best friends, one of the, brightest up and coming coaches in college basketball. So, with his basketball experience, I mean, he is a, a national champion, first round NBA draft pick. That goes a long way when it comes to recruiting, some of these student athletes, and it shows you that, hey, look, I've been there, let me to try to help you to get to the NBA. Some of the commitments that he's had, in this class and in the next class, Whitehead, who's a top 5 player in the country. Caleb Foster is a 5-star from Oak Hill, where he attended high school. He also helped Christian Reeves, who's a 3-star center that also plays for Oak Hill. So there's a lot of things that I think Nolan Smith brings to the table. I'm interested to see what that looks like on the sidelines in terms of what is his role during the game, in various games for Kenny Payne, with being an associate head coach role. But obviously, a step up, you would assume a pay raise with the upgrade in title. And I also think that for you can kind of put the recruiting, aspect of it aside, because I don't think it shocks anyone that he is a very, that this is a very big loss for Duke, because he is a very solid recruiter and will very much, fit in with Kenny Payne and really, deliver some solid recruits to the University of Louisville, hopefully. But let's kind of turn the page. Let's look at this from Nolan Smith's perspective, because I saw, some things from Duke fans like, well, why would Nolan, number one, go to Louisville, where there's been, quote unquote turmoil for the past decade, but also to an ACC school? I mean, he played here at Duke. He's been referred to as the people's champion by many Duke fans. Why would he go to a rival of the Duke Blue Devils? How could he do this to this program? And I think that my response is, you kind of have to allow him to make the decisions for himself. Like, I'm not going to sit here and try to speculate what coming to this university means for him. Obviously, he comes back to the place where he was born, where his dad was a national champion here. And now he has the opportunity to leave his mark on, on this program, continue the Smith legacy here in the Derby City, and just maybe be able to deliver a national title just like his dad did as a player, but now him as a coach. And I that sentimental part of this, obviously I'm not going to speculate on what the decision was or what the deciding factors were for Nolan Smith to come back, but it is a cool storyline that Nolan Smith has the opportunity now to come into the program where his dad won a national championship, was very successful here for the Cardinals. He now has a chance to not only uphold his legacy and extend the Smith legacy, but also create a legacy of his own here at the university. And I think that that's super cool. And I really, really hope that things work out for the best here, here at the University of Louisville. And I truly believe that they will. But, the Cardinals will be forced to kind of rebuild the roster. There are many departures, which we will talk about on tomorrow's show, but there also are some key returning players, beginning with Ellis. We will talk about why next season could be a game changer for the North Carolina native. We'll do that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because I don't have time I do have time to take vitamins, but I'm not necessarily a big vitamins guy. I want a better gut health, more energy, an optimized immune system. Not necessarily a huge fan of taking, vitamins in pill form and stuff like that. And a lot of times I just forget them. But I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, wanted to see what the hype was about. I could not be any more satisfied with my decision to go with Athletic Greens. So what is it? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens, etc. to help you start your day right. It gives you energy. It helps you recover from a long day or week at work. It helps you focus and aging, all of these things. So do yourself a favor. Athletic Greens right now is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/college. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/college to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I want to take this time again to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Sorry about that. Before we get into the next segment, I do want to apologize for the lack of episodes, or I guess lack of full weeks of episodes over the past couple of weeks. If you've been watching the shows or listening to the shows over the past 21 days or however many days, you know that I'm having some trouble Wi-Fi wise, and unfortunately the past 2 days it's been the same issues. But thankfully the Thursday and Friday episodes will be with the high quality video like you're seeing now and the high quality audio. But I do want to apologize for the fact that I'm not having full weeks of shows. Hopefully that will this momentum will carry over into the next weeks. But for this show in particular, we're talking about Ellis and why next season could be a game changer for the North Carolina native. This past season, his first season with the program, averaged 8.7 points per game, 1.9 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 39.7% from the field while shooting 36% from behind the arc, 69.2% from the charity stripe. So the Durham, North Carolina native had some up and downs this season. Like I mentioned, had a couple of 20-point performances, most notably the one that came in the home overtime loss to the eventual national runners-up North Carolina Tar Heels. But next season could possibly one that sees Ellis in some type of an All-ACC team possibility or All-ACC honorable mention possibility. Because number one, you have some stability. You have, a guy like Nolan Smith that you're being coached up by now as one of the, very solid guards in the past 20 years of college basketball, national champion. He's been in the league, one of the brightest up-and-coming coaches like we talked about in the past segment. You get some good instruction there. Also, Kenny Payne being a very solid coach in terms of player development. That's solid. And also, you can't take away just valuable game reps in Power 5 level basketball. It seemed like early on last season, it kind of took Ellis a little bit to kind of get acclimated with the speed of high Division I basketball. But once he did, when the game started slowing down, the turnovers started to cease a little bit. You saw some better shot selection, and Ellis was more comfortable getting downhill and trying to finish around the rim. Very athletic. I think that, coming into the season, I remember saying on this show that I could see him being a double-digit scorer. And ultimately, kind of flirting with those numbers, averaging 8.7 points per game. And I think that, if it were for a couple changes and some mid-season skids for Ellis, I do think that he could have possibly hit that 10 points per game mark. But ultimately, I digress. I think next season is going to see him as a starter. Now, people will say, "Oh, well, don't we need some new faces with this program?" There's a team that won 14 games or something like that. They didn't even come close to sniffing the tournament, had a losing record. Do we really want a player that struggled at times last season to start next season? I think that the answer really kind of depends. But for Ellis and Sidney Curry, I think that you kind of really have to focus on the context here and kind of see the potential where that could lead them. There are a lot of people out there that compared Ellis's season this past year as sophomore year Russ Smith. And I do think that really kind of fits, in terms of, kind of player comparison. Russ Smith as a sophomore showed some flashes of being absolutely brilliant on the basketball court. But he also had times where the shot selection was a little bit questionable, and obviously Russ Smith's shot selection was never not questionable at times, but it seemed like he got sped up a lot. The percentages and shooting efficiencies didn't necessarily depict or epitomize the ability and the potential that those players held. So I think that next season we're going to see Ellis take the next step forward. He is was one of the bright spots on this past year's team, the best athlete on the team. I think that when you get him with some solid shooters around him on the perimeter, you get some solid athletes as well that can kind of create their own shot. Now, I think that you have to take everything with a grain of salt, because this was a Louisville team last year that really struggled to find their identity on offense. They never truly found it. They never came to terms with who they were on the offensive end. So you have to kind of take everything with a grain of salt when you talk about, oh, well, look at the woes that Ellis had on offense at times. Well, I think with a clearer vision of what Kenny Payne wants to do on offense and the coaching staff and how they implement Ellis and what they see him in terms of his role for this upcoming team, I think that that's going to help him in his development, because he's going to be able to, hone in on what is being asked of him. And I think that, with his vision, with his ability to, shoot the ball well and create his own shot and get to the basket with his athleticism, I think that the sky's the limit for him offensively. I think that we saw his defensive tenacity and his, the effort was always there, but him being able to kind of read opposing offenses got better over the progression of the season. So ultimately, I think that this is going to be a very solid year for Ellis that could possibly see him land in some type of All-ACC mention in some capacity. So hopefully we get to see some more roster news coming out soon, because I want to see who Kenny Payne is going to put around Ellis and Sidney Curry. But one of those players is a key returning guy in Mike James, the freshman who didn't necessarily play a single minute due to an Achilles injury before the season. I am very high on what his role could be next season. I'm going to explain why that is here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline, the title sponsor of the show. It is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships odds, podcasts, and reviews for all of the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. I think that if you asked a handful of Louisville fans, a couple weeks ago, who from this past year's team would you like to see back for 2022-23? Most people would say Ellis, Sidney Curry, so on and so forth. Mike James got a lot of love from the fan base in this certain hypothetical because I think people saw the potential was there before the season. They were high on him coming out of high school. There were reports coming out of preseason practice that Mike James was absolutely showing out. And, the Achilles injury really, put that momentum to a screeching halt. Now, obviously, you have to take into account an Achilles injury is one of the major injuries that an athlete can, experience. So you have to take things into consideration when you talk about, how much is he going to be able to return in terms of his athleticism, in terms of his explosiveness with his first step, because I think that that's one thing about Mike James that really impressed me coming out of high school was his ability to get to the basket, his explosiveness on offense, his footwork on defense. This is where things are going to get a little interesting because hopefully he has made a full recovery. It'll be interesting to see if he is fully ready to go by the beginning of next season. Hopefully he is, and hopefully he is having a quick and speedy, or a quick but full recovery. But assuming he does get fully healthy for the beginning of next season, I am very excited for what Mike James can bring to the table. Like I mentioned, has an explosive first step. I think his ability to create his own offense is an underrated aspect of his game. Coming into this program, I won't say consensus because I think that people kind of started to catch on, but an overwhelming majority of belief in terms of what Mike James projected at the next level in terms of the player that he projected to be was, mainly a defender that had the ability to ultimately at some point in his college career become somewhat of a reliable scoring option. I don't think people understood, myself included, going into his senior year of high school just how advanced of a scorer he is on the offensive end, whether it's, taking it to the rim. I think he's shown that he is a better shooter than, previously alluded to, in his ability to create his own shot off the dribble. That really, encouraged me in terms of what he could, provide, year one. He could have been a guy. There were some people that I talked to that believed he could have been a starter right away for the Cardinals. And that kind of shows, just how far along he was in his respective development. Now you have, a coach that really emphasizes, defense and, getting out in transition and letting players run. And I think that really helps, the player that Mike James is, or the type of player that he is, with him being, such a very solid on-ball defender, has active hands, good, size for his 6'6". I think he's in the 6'6" to 6'8", range in terms of his frame. I'm not sure exactly what that number is, but ultimately, I think that the sky's the limit. I'm not sure if he's going to be a starter next year, but I would almost bank on him playing some rotational minutes. He could be like a Dre Davis type player that you get that, that hustle on both ends of the court. But I think that the offensive ceiling is a little bit higher for Mike James rather than a guy like Dre Davis. So it'll really just kind of depend on the players that Kenny Payne brings in. I mean, you're looking to, and we'll talk about departures on tomorrow's episode. I mean, I think you're adding, or I think you're being forced to add like 7 players. You have 7 scholarships to fill. So Mike James, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that he's going to be a double-digit scorer. I think we could see him in, the 6 to 7 point range with him, being a very solid supporting cast member, very solid defender, maybe one of the best on the team, and that's used in situations to guard an opposing team's best players. So I'm interested to see what that, what he's going to look like coming off of his rehabilitated Achilles injury. Hopefully it is a full recovery for him and he has no setbacks nor limitations to his athleticism, his explosiveness, to his bounce, whatever it may be, But ultimately, I'm very excited for both he and Ellis, and obviously for Nolan Smith to join this coaching staff. But tomorrow's episode is going to talking about a football commit and Jamari Johnson. Also you have some key departures in Matt Cross, Dre Davis, and Noah Locke. We will talk about all that on tomorrow's episode. Also, a couple quick shouts. First, the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast. You can check out the most recent episode at cardinalsportszone.com. Do yourself a favor. Also, check out Locked On NFL Draft and make it your second listen of the day. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. But that's going to wrap up this Thursday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, and we will see you right back here